44 past. So here's that exchange on Capitol Hill yesterday that Mike mentioned before the break. Acting Homeland Security Secretary Chad Wolf was grilled by Republican Senator John Kennedy about the U.S. response to the coronavirus outbreak, with Kennedy bewildered by Wolf's lack of specifics.
How many are you anticipating?
Again, we're working with HHS to determine that.
How many are you anticipating?
We do anticipate the number will grow. I don't have an exact figure for you, though.
Do you have an estimate? Is someone modeling that? Do you have any way of guessing?
Again, HHS, through their medical professionals.
Well, yes, sir, but you're head of Homeland Security,
yes, sir,
and your job is to keep us safe. You can't tell us how many your models are anticipating.
No, Senator. Again, I would defer you to the Health and Human Services for that.
Okay. Don't you think you ought to check on that?
We will.
As the head of Homeland Security, how is it transmitted?
A variety of different ways, Senator.
Tell me what they are, please.
Again, human to human is what we've primarily seen.
Human to human, how? What's the mortality rate so far, nationwide?
I believe it's
worldwide.
Worldwide, I believe it's under 2%.
How much under 2%?
I'll get you an exact figure. You're asking me a number of medical questions that
I'm asking
CDC
you questions
and
because you're
HHS
Secretary of the Department
on.
of Homeland Security, and you're supposed to keep us safe.
Yes, sir.
And you need to know the answers to these questions.
And this...
Okay, I'm not scared at all.
This is, and by the way, talking about rattling the markets, you have Donald Trump angry for people in his administration preparing Americans, telling them the truth. You have Donald Trump saying nothing to worry about here. Move along, just like the Chinese.
Yeah.
When it'll all go away in April, we'll be fine. You have Donald Trump hiring, well, first of all, firing just about every competent person in his administration and hiring one acting secretary after another acting secretary. These people who are political dupes, who are loyal to Donald Trump, but that's the only thing they have going for him. It's the Richard Grenell model. Oh, he knows nothing about the intel community. He failed in his last job.
Might have committed a crime.
He might have committed a crime, but he'll be loyal to us. I'm telling you, this stuff is about to get real with a lot of Trump supporters who say, oh, I like how he speaks his mind and he's cleaning out Washington. No, he's actually making Washington not only more swampy, but he's making Washington more stupid, Mike, with people who don't know what they're doing when a pandemic could come in. And if a pandemic comes in, incompetence kills, and it doesn't matter whether it's killing people in blue states or in red states. The pandemic sweeps through an entire country. And Donald Trump's only worried about the stock market collapsing. Donald Trump's incompetence and him covering it up and saying everything's fine, move along, it's only going to further panic the market.
If you just read the news accounts of this epidemic globally, it's enough to obviously become concerned and scared. You also, way down in the stories and throughout other stories, you realize that there is a purge going on within the Trump administration, to your point, where people who are skilled at what they've been doing for years in various departments are being purged, thrown out of their jobs because they're not loyal to Donald Trump. And in the case of the economy, I believe you had a few days ago Larry Kudlow.
By the way, Mike, could I hate to interrupt you. Here? They're not blindly loyal to Donald Trump. They're being purged because of that. And in this case, they could be purged because they are telling the truth. And Donald Trump doesn't. So, because there are a lot of people that say, oh, well, shouldn't a president have somebody who's loyal to him? Yes. But if telling the truth is a sign of disloyalty, which Donald Trump sees it as a sign of disloyalty,
then we're China.
That's where we are.
Case in point, the Director of National Intelligence, Admiral Joe Maguire, out.
Told the truth.
We don't like bad news. We don't like the truth. Out. But Larry Kudlow, I believe a few days ago, indicated that what's happening to the stock market was a great time to buy low. That was his response.
Look, I think it's what a lot of you guys said. You're dealing with a different kind of administration than what we're used to, and I think that if this were still George W. Bush or Barack Obama, we would be in a different place. Let's remember in the Ebola crisis, Obama, which never even got anywhere near here, Obama immediately appointed an Ebola czar, Ron Klain, who's an extremely capable guy. The whole administration kind of came together, and a crisis and a panic were averted. And you contrast that with this. And by the way, Donald Trump is also trying to cut the budget of the CDC,
right?
Which I think at the moment we probably all appreciate should be augmented, not cut.
Yeah, and by the way, this is a great example for people to say government shouldn't do anything. This is when people want government to do something. This is when, food safety. I mean, you can go down the list with food safety, water safety, air safety, all of that. But Steve, I'm wondering, I talked to the business leader late last night who has a global business. And he said, this could change the landscape of the world economy, depending on how far this expands. He said there are huge freighters just floating in the water in China. Their production lines are not, the chain of supply lines are being shattered. This could start a recession. He actually thought a recession was going to start out of this. And he said, this could change the way the world operates, depending on how badly this is, because China could be turned into a ghost town.
Well, look, one thing that needs to be understood is this is very different from SARS. The world is a different place than it was when we had SARS. The world is a far more integrated place. Global trade is far more integrated. The supply lines are far more important to production around the world. China is a huge source of demand. And yes, if this goes on, it could have China will have negative GDP in the first quarter of this year for all the obvious reasons. If this goes on like this, it could well disrupt the economy of the world in a very substantial way. And that's why the stock market is reacting, in addition to the feeling that there's nobody really in charge here.
Well, and the president has a daily kind of habit of lying. I mean, they're tracked by the Washington Post. And Trump supporters who think, okay, he says what he thinks, it doesn't matter if he lies. They're going to care whether or not he's lying about this, and we're not going to know if he's telling the truth. And if all the scientists have been fired, we're in a bad place about this. This actually could careen out of control.
Somebody, I don't know who.
We'll see what happens, as he says.
Don't know who can get the president's here because he doesn't listen to anybody around him anymore. But if somebody could, they would need to tell him, Mr. President, the more you try to tamp down the reality of the possibility of a pandemic sweeping the globe and coming to America, the more you hurt the stock market. Since that's the only thing you care about, you need to be transparent. This is a great example, Mike, of how authoritarian states who think they can tamp down on information, who think they can tamp down on the truth, who think, in this case, Donald Trump gets angry when people tell the truth, how they just, in the end, hurt their own cause. If China had been straightforward from the very beginning, if they had spoken honestly about this from the very beginning, moved aggressively against it, this crisis wouldn't be where it is now. And now we have Donald Trump returning home, actually trying to copy the worst traits of China from the early stages of this crisis.
Steve mentioned Ron Klain, highly competent guy who worked in the Obama administration, and the Ebola crisis, which was handled nearly perfectly when it arose. It's not a stretch to think that the way this is going, we just showed the clip of one member of the Trump administration with no answers. It's not a stretch to think that this election could turn on the issue of competence. In the Trump administration so far has been incompetent on so many different levels. But when you're incompetent, when it's a threat to people's health, when you're wondering about could your 4-year-old child get the coronavirus, what would the effects be? What would the percentages be for his survival, his or her survival? When people start worrying about competence in dealing with a health issue nationwide, this could turn something.
By the way, I think it's starting right now. You have John Kennedy, a guy who has blindly followed Donald Trump over the past several months, understanding, wait a second, this could actually
be bad.
kill a lot of people. And the state of Louisiana if we don't get ahead of it.
Any other administration would have put together a task force. It'd be meeting every day. There would be a czar or somebody in charge of this thing that the public would be aware of. The president would already be on national television, not under the helicopter blades whirring, making crazy comments, but would have gone on television and said, here's what we're doing. This is tough, but we are fighting it. And I think all of that would have made a difference, not just to the stock market, but to the public's confidence in leadership.
All right, still ahead. Money isn't everything, but in politics, it sure can make a difference. Steve Ratner has a look at the 2020 money race and Bloomberg and Steyer aside, how the Democratic candidates are doing ahead of South Carolina and Super Tuesday. Morning Joe will be right back.
Now, the virus that we're talking about having to do, a lot of people think that goes away in April with the heat, as the heat comes in. Typically, that will go away in April. We're in great shape.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.